Now, God, we turn to hear a word from you, for Lord, without you, I'm overwhelmed at the thought of preaching. Without you, I'm inadequate to deliver something of value to news that is priceless. So, God, I ask that you be ever so gracious unto me. Allow a ray of your light to penetrate the darkness of my understanding. Grant confidence and clarity that utterance may be given unto me, that I might open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel, that your people will be edified, your name glorified. Amen. Come on, help me celebrate this band and this praise team. Philippians, the fourth chapter. Philippians, the fourth chapter, and I'm going to read the 4th to the 7th verse. Philippians 4, the 4th to the 7th verse says, always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. Remember, the Lord is coming soon. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And I want to continue a little bit of the conversation from last week. Last week, I said, let's get our voice back. And this week, I want to challenge us, let's get our joy back. Let's get our joy back. Vern, it blows my mind how many times I experience mean people in church. It blows my mind how many mean people go to church every Sunday and come back meaner than last Sunday. I ain't talking about in this church. But overall in church, it blows my mind how many mean people go to church. It blows my mind how many bitter people go to church every Sunday and come back more bitter than the Sunday before. It blows my mind how many jealous people go to church every Sunday and come back more jealous than the Sunday before. Don't go to this church. Don't go to this church, I promise you. Blows my mind how many judgmental people go to church every Sunday and come back more judgmental the following Sunday. Blows my mind. That's all I got. But I find it interesting. I find it interesting how many of that we find in church. How many of that we find in people who claim to be on the Lord's side, who claim to be in the number, who claim to be on the list. You in the book. Who claim to be going to heaven, who claim to be saved. One of my mentors, Reverend Dr. Richard Dent, used to be the former pastor of the First African Baptist Church in Darby Township before he retired. He would submit that Oftentimes when you find bitterness, when you find jealousy, when you find anger, when you find judgment, oftentimes what it is, it's a lack of joy in a person's life. Oftentimes it's you don't have joy. I think about how many times we sing that song, I still have joy, I still have joy. After all the things I've been through, I still have joy. And there'd be a lot of folk with no joy talking about I still got joy. And I want to challenge us to understand that joy is the natural response to what God's doing in your life. I'm going to say it again. Joy is the natural response to the promise or fulfillment of what God is doing in your life, which means the real evidence of God in your life is not seen in what you have in your pocket. It's not seen in what you drive. It's not seen in where you live. It's not seen in where you work or what title you have. The real evidence of God in your life is seen in your level of joy. You can't be angry and have joy. You can't be jealous and have joy. You can't be bitter and have joy. You can't be judgmental and have joy. It just does not equate. It's like putting two magnets together that won't go together. You can't have those things and call yourself joyful. But the truth of the matter is, joy is the evidence of your relationship with God. If you ain't got no joy in your life, it's a sad thing to call yourself a child of God. Now, I get it. You can go through some things, and there can be times when you don't feel joy. There could be times where you ain't feeling what's going on. But at the end of the day, when you really understand what joy is, that's the thing that'll help you get through the moments where you ain't feeling it. That's the thing that'll help you get through when you ain't feeling good, when you don't like what you said, when you don't like what you heard, when you don't like what you're going through. It's joy that can get you to your next level. It's joy that can get you through your hard season. It's joy that can get you through what it is you are going through, because God is able. God is able. Well, there's a couple of reasons why I want you to get your joy back, because I need you to understand some of the things that joy helps you to do. The first thing that comes up for me is this: joy is what helps you to love people. It's in the text. Look at verse 5. Verse 5 says, verse 4 and 5 says, always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. In other words, let everyone see how you treat people. It is joy that will help you treat and deal with people. Sissy, one of the things that we fooled ourselves into believing, we fooled ourselves into believing that how we treat people is a reflection of the person being treated. I'm going to say it again. We fooled ourselves into believing that how we treat people is a reflection of the person. How you treat people is never a reflection of the person that you're treating. How you treat people is always a reflection of you. How do you, at the end of the day, the question is, are you willing to treat people as a child of God, no matter how they look, no matter what they say, no matter whether they act like it or not? How you treat people is always reflective of you. And can I really push it? When you have joy, it means that people can't change you. People can't push you, because your joy is not predicated on them. At the end of the day, I want to see some folk who treat people with kindness, who treat people well, who treat people like they are a child of God, which means it is found not in them, it's found in you. But you know what? You don't want to admit it. You don't want to admit that you yourself have at times allowed yourself to treat people based off of them. I'm going to give you an example. Let somebody walk up in here right now with clothes that they had on for the past 2 years. Let somebody walk up in here not smelling like they showered. Let somebody walk up in here not looking like they belong at your house. And let them sit down right next to you. Most of y'all in here, before you say good morning or God bless you, you're going to look at them like, why they choose to sit here? Because our natural reaction is to think that it is okay to treat people the way they look or to treat people the way that they make us feel. Here's the deal. If God treated us the way we looked, if God treated us the way we make him feel, can I get some folk who can be real in this thing and go on and admit, I ain't always been good to the Lord. I ain't always been a reflection of God. And I thank God that God doesn't treat me the way I deserve. The nature of God says that I made you. I took time to form you. You are beautifully and wonderfully made. Even if you ain't acting like it, I still gonna love you. Even if you ain't doing my will, I'm still gonna love you. Even if you ain't doing my way, I'm still gonna love you. That's what you ought to have for people. You ought to get to a spot where you don't allow people's actions to define who they are. You don't allow people's situations or their station in life to define how you treat them. I need some folk who's willing to treat somebody good. Why? Because the Lord's been good to me. I need some folk who's willing to pray for somebody. Why? Because I've seen the way God prayers answered. Real joy says that I can treat you well, even if I don't like your situation, even if I don't like what you're going through, even if I don't like how you're acting, I can treat you well. Why? Because I got joy, and because I understand where this joy comes from, because I know that the only reason why I have this joy is not because the world gave it. It's because of my right relationship with him. And because of my right relationship with him, I have joy, which means I can treat you right because I can help you get to a place where you have right relationship with him. And when you have right relationship with him, you can have the same joy that I have. In other words, I'm here to pass joy. I'm here to pass it along. I'm here to tell somebody about the one who can save anybody. I'm here to tell somebody about the one who can save everybody. And it's because of my joy. Joy helps you love people. But then not only that, joy helps you handle your problems. I know. You thought that your problems were able to dictate how much joy you had. You thought that because you were going through a thing, you shouldn't have joy. I like the way Dr. Tony Evans puts it. Dr. Tony Evans puts it that our goal in life is to become more like thermostat Christians than thermometer Christians. You know the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer, right? A thermometer is filled with mercury. Mercury has scientific principles that responds to the environment that it's in. If you take a thermometer and put it in a hot place, the mercury will begin to rise. If you take a thermometer and put it in a cold place, the mercury will begin to go lower. In other words, all a thermometer does is respond to the environment that it's placed in. But do you know what a thermostat does? A thermostat does the same thing. A thermostat will tell you what the environment does, but the thermostat is connected to something. And the thermostat is connected to something that has power, and that power is then able to change the environment that it's in. In other words, the thermostat does not just accept the environment. The thermostat takes time to adjust the environment because it's connected to a source, and because of what's on the inside of that thermostat, it just doesn't have to be cold because the room is cold. It can make an adjustment to make the room a little warmer. It doesn't have to be warm because the room is warm. It can make an adjustment to make the room a little colder. In other words, when you understand that your life as a Christian is more like a thermostat, you ain't got to walk around letting the environment dictate how you feel. You ain't got to worry. You ain't got to walk around letting the environment decide if you're going to be up, whether letting the environment decide if you're going to be down. You have the ability because of what you're connected to. You've got joy on your inside, which means you have the ability to change the environment around you. You got the ability to adjust whether or not I like what I'm going through, whether or not I'm feeling what I'm going through or not. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it, so I ain't going to let the world dictate how it's used. I got joy in the midst of calamities. I've got joy in the midst of hard times. I've got joy in the midst of sorrow. I've got joy in the midst of what I'm going through. And it's because of that joy that I can push through this moment. It's because of that joy that I can say God is able to do exceeding abundance above all I could ever ask or think. It's because of that joy that I can remind myself that he's done amazing things in my life over and over again. I don't know about you, but the next time you find yourself going through something, I dare you to take a moment and think and realize this ain't the first time I've been through hell. This ain't the first time I experienced drama. This ain't the first time I experienced death. This ain't the first time I experienced heartache. And the same God that got me through the last time is the same God that's going to get me through this time. So I ain't allowing what I'm going through to cancel me. I ain't allowing what I'm going through to cancel my praise, to cancel my worship. I'm going to use the joy that's on the inside of me to tell somebody that God can do just what he said he would do. I'm going to use the joy that's inside of me to tell somebody that God will keep his promise, that God will open doors, that God will make ways, that God will have do new things in my life, that God will give me brand new opportunities. I'm trying to help you get there, but I guess it ain't enough joy in you. I dare you to think about how God has changed you in the midst of your environment. Is there anybody that has this testimony? He may not have changed my situation, but he changed me in the midst of it. I'm preaching whether you shouting or not. Is there anybody that can say it may not be fixed, but I'm fixed? It may not be over, but I'm still pushing. At the end of the day, I can shout off the fact that the joy I have is the very thing that's going to help me get through my problems. But then not only that, I'm going to get up out of your way. Joy helps you to have peace. Real peace. You know, the older I get, the more I understand and appreciate peace. The older I get, the more I understand and the more I appreciate peace. And this type of peace, what the Bible describes is a peace that transcends understanding, a peace that blows people's mind. It's describing the kind of peace that makes people uncomfortable. You ever been somewhere where you expect a reaction from somebody? You expect a real reaction, and all you get is a smooth, everything's going to be all right. You ever expect somebody to blow up? You expect somebody to go off, and they just say, it's good. My mother, she didn't know I was going to talk about her today. My mother helps me with this. My mother, don't try my mother. I just want to help you. Don't ever try my mother. Don't try my mother. That beautiful, sophisticated woman sitting there is a gangster. She's a gangster. That's an original gangster. I never forget. There were some things I kind of understood about my mother growing up. I kind of understood that you only had about 3 words in a sentence after she told you to do something before she popped me in my mouth. You only had about 3 words in a talkback sentence before she popped me in my mouth. And I also kind of understood this about my mother. My mother had some boundaries. She had some boundaries that folk weren't allowed to cross. You had to be invited into some of the spaces of her life. You just because you knew who she was or saw her before did not mean that you had a right to have a speaking role in her life. And I have seen my mother back in her young days. I've seen my mother correct somebody who thought they had a speaking role in her life. And I've seen my mother do it with the King's English. I've seen my mother do it with the King's English. Yep, I'm telling on her. I've seen my mother lay some folk out. But do you know when it blew my mind? I never will forget. There was a day where my mother's grandmother, she had passed away. And you know, anytime you dealing with funerals and arrangements, family can get crazy. I never will forget. There was a day when my mother's grandmother passed away, and we were dealing with family. I ain't gonna say who it is, but somebody in my family said the wrong thing to my mother on the wrong day. Said the wrong thing to my mother on the wrong day. And I was sitting next to my mother. I was sitting right next to her. And soon as they said what they said, something on the inside of me said, you need to pack up your stuff and move, because it is about to go down. Something on the inside of me said, you might want to move your seat to another place. And so I gathered my coat and I began to tiptoe to the other side of the room. I got to the other side of the room and I paused. I was puzzled. I was confused. I was sitting there and I looked back and my mother was sitting in the same spot. And I was like, oh, no, that ain't what's supposed to be happening right now. They supposed to be on the floor right now. They're supposed to be looking for their bottom lip right now. I didn't understand what was going on. And they said the wrong thing to my mother again. And I never will forget it. My mother looked at them dead in their eyes. And my mother said, I love you. I love you. I was looking and I said, who is that woman right there? I didn't understand. I said, who is that? Because they supposed to be looking for they still to this day should be looking for their teeth. I didn't understand. That was 10 years ago and they should still be in the living room looking for their teeth. I didn't understand why. My mother looked at him and said, I love you. I never will forget. We were driving home and I asked, I couldn't take it. I said, Mom, how did so-and-so get away with that? She said, Stephen, I'm at peace with where my grandmother is. I'm at peace with what I'm going through. I'm at peace with this situation. That's when I realized that there was something special about this thing called peace. That's where the end of the text became real to me. It says, peace will guard your heart and your mind. When you've got real peace, it'll be the very thing that guards you from acting a fool. When you got real peace, it'll be the very thing that guards you from compromising your integrity. When you got real peace, it'll be the very thing that keeps you grounded. But you can't skip the end of the text, because the end of the text says it will guard your hearts and your minds as you live in Christ Jesus, which means this kind of peace is only found in Christ Jesus. This kind of peace is only found in him, which means the more you abide in him, the more joy you will have. The more joy you will have, the more you can handle people, the more joy you will have, the more you will handle your problems. The more joy you have, the more peace you will have, and the more peace you will have, the more your life is protected, the more your life is guarded. See, you thought you needed to protect yourself, but let me help you with it. It is the peace of God that keeps your mind right. It is the peace of God that keeps you in your right mind. It is the peace of God that keeps you guarded. I'm done preaching, but I'm going to give you a chance to realize what joy is. Joy is the opportunity to respond to what God's doing in my life. Joy is the opportunity to thank God for all that he's done and to thank God for the promises that are on the way. And here is the shout. The text says, remember, the Lord is coming. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything and tell God what you need and thank him for what he has done. I'm trying to help you get to joy. because joy is found in your ability to abide in him, and joy is found in your ability to worship him, and joy is found in your ability to thank him. Well, let me go on and take my seat, because you need a reason to have joy. Is there anybody here that can take a moment and stop and think about the goodness of God in your life? Is there anybody here that can take a moment and stop and think about the ways that he's made? Stop and think about the doors that he's opened. Stop and think about the times that he didn't let you cancel yourself out. Stop and think about the times that he didn't let your actions take you out. Stop and think about the way he fed you when you couldn't feed yourself. Stop and think about the way he kept you when you weren't keeping yourself. Stop and think about the way he got you through college. Stop and think about the way he got you the job you're on. Stop and think about when he kept you even though you got fired. Stop and think about the business he let you start. Stop and think about the marriage he put together. Stop and think about the children you raised. Stop and think about the people that came back into your life. Stop and think about the people who didn't wrong you the way you wronged them. Stop and think of the goodness of God. I dare you to act like God ain't done nothing for you. I dare you to act like God's not bigger than everything you're going through. Is there anybody that's got joy this morning? I still have joy. I still have joy. I got joy, unspeakable joy. I got joy, so I'm going to thank him. I got joy, so I'm going to give him glory. I got joy, so I'm not going to let what's going on around me define me. I got joy in the midst of what I'm going through. I got joy in the midst of this situation. I got joy no matter how I feel. I got joy no matter what's going on. I got joy. I'm trying to leave y'all alone, but I got joy, and my joy comes from Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Shalom, Lily of the Valley, Balm of Gilead, Lion of Judah, Jesus, 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 Jesus. Is there anybody here that's willing to have joy? Is there anybody here that's willing to show your joy? Is there anybody here that's willing to worship him? Worship him. Let's get our joy back. Let's get our joy back. Joy helps me deal with people. Joy helps me treat people right. Joy helps me deal with my environment. Joy is what helps me get through what I ain't feeling. Joy is what leads to his peace. A peace that transcends all understanding. A peace that guards my mind and guards my heart as long as I live in him. Let's get our joy back. One of the biggest things the enemy will use against you is to steal your joy. Enemy ain't out to kill you. He's out to get you to kill yourself. The enemy wants to snatch your joy. Because one of the saddest things to see is somebody with no joy. Somebody going through the mundane. Somebody just going through. Don't get it twisted. There will be times where you feel sadness. There will be times where you feel hopeless. There will be times where you feel discouraged. But if you build up your joy, if you build it up, that's the thing that'll get you through your sad moments. That's the thing that'll get you through a helpless and a hopeless moment. Trusting and believing that God is even able to handle this. Trusting and believing that God is even bigger than this. I don't know who I'm talking to.